Are you satisfied with your understanding of sustainability? If you are not, imagine a journey together, a pluralistic one, with academia, innovators, startups, NGOs, all looking for solutions to the greatest challenge of our time. My name is Samuele Tini, and this is the Sustainability Journey.
Welcome to this new episode. Today we are exploring further our journey in the movement of the B Corp, a movement that is really shaping capitalism and trying to reinvent it, coupling purpose with profit. And today we are traveling very far. We are traveling to the Australian continent, New Zealand, where we meet the head of sustainability of one of the leading B Corps, if not the biggest one in New Zealand, Julia Jackson. Thank you, Julia, for being here.
Thanks, Samuele, for having me.
Thank you so much. It is the first time we reach this continent. I know in English it's called Australia, in Italian, in my language it's called Oceania. With you, we are reaching the 5 continents. We talk about B Corp, but our podcast is called the Sustainability Journey. And I want to ask you, which is Julia's journey to sustainability?
I guess I have been always interested in making a difference and sort of not wanting to follow a traditional career path. So when I was at university, I studied international relations, which was sort of politics at the time. Sustainable business as a field of study didn't really exist. So we all studied international relations, which was all about, how can we actually make a difference and understand how we do sort of development in a different way, which I really liked. And I've never really worked in that field specifically, but I did very quickly after university decide to go traveling. I guess having learnt about all of these exotic and interesting places and how sort of community development is happening in those places, I wanted to go and see and experience those for myself. So I packed my bags and bought a one-way ticket to Argentina, actually, in South America, and then sort of became a backpacker for about a year. And so I backpacked through all of South America and made my way up to Central America. By the time I was in Panama, I had very much run out of all of my money. And so was looking for opportunities where I could stay longer in Latin America without spending too much money and also making a difference. So I got an opportunity, a small eco hotel in the country of Guatemala, which is in Central America. Hotel has about sort of space for about 30 people. So it really is quite small. And they offered woofing basically. So you sort of live on site and you work there as well. And so in exchange for living and your food and all that sort of stuff, you contribute sort of 6 to 8 hours a day. Yeah, I turned up there, had never, thought about this place really before, but just absolutely fell in love with the place. It's a beautiful Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. If anyone feels like Googling it, it's such a beautiful, beautiful lake, really stunning. And the hotel was just a really amazing sort of combination, I guess, of a lot of the things that I'd studied and been interested in, because it had all of the sustainable architecture features, so all of the, things like reusing water, low impact construction materials, all of that sort of stuff, combined with the social element around actually empowering workers to have a better wage, have a better job prospects and opportunities, training people up from nothing and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, so I really got an amazing experience there, and I ended up sort of staying for a year. That hotel, I thought I was probably going to be there for a couple of months and then move on to my next adventure. It ended up being a full year. And one of the things there I think that really made a massive impact on me as a person was we had an algal bloom on the lake. So a bacteria that came up and covered the entire lake in a horrible, horrible algae. And every single person around the lake, so there's about 25 different villages that live around the lake, and all of them are dependent on the lake in some way. So whether it be for their food or commerce, and no one really knew what to do. There was this horrible algal bloom. It felt like it was threatening the entire sort of viability of the community. And so we were sort of really in the thick of it, sort of trying to figure out, well, what's happening from a science perspective? Why is this happening? What solutions can we provide? And then also sort of working very much on the ground with the community around getting to understand that science and understand what the appropriate response was. So it was a really incredibly intense time, quite stressful, quite overwhelming to be there, and particularly as a foreigner. You don't necessarily have the same ownership over that, but it really made me sort of understand why I wanted to work in the field of sustainability, which is combining, social, because at the end of the day, it's all about, people have to be involved in making these changes, but also understanding the environmental impact and the interconnectivity of both of those sort of ecosystems, really.
Wow, Eureka moment, it was really coming from the grassroots level, and it's really where they are not traveling, you have really seen the different connections. And so from there, I mean, now you have now become ahead of sustainability, but you in an important farm in your country. So it's really, but you still have this passion and this word that was born there, we can say, on the shores of the lake in Guatemala. Let me ask you, now you are a leader now in the field of sustainability. And then I want to ask you, what about Kiwibank? Before going into the B Corp and the discussion, what is Kiwibank? And then what is your role there?
So Kiwibank's an interesting company. So we are fully commercial. We were started by the New Zealand government in the early 2000s. The bank was actually created under the government, and they were given some money to start it up. At the time, owned by one of a sort of a state-owned enterprise, our national mail service, so New Zealand Post. And the idea behind Kiwibank when it was set up was that there wasn't a large bank that was fully New Zealand owned, and all of our big banks in New Zealand were owned by overseas companies. And so they really wanted to create a big, strategically and systemically important bank where Kiwi people in New Zealand, so we call ourselves Kiwi, had the ability to actually put their money in somewhere where the money was going to stay in the country and produce benefit for Aotearoa New Zealand. So it's a really interesting, I guess, case study in and of itself of how sort of a fully commercial business is running, but actually with the sort of quite strong linkage back to government and quite strong linkage back to the community of New Zealand and trying to do something different and better and provide a better or fairer banking alternative for the people of New Zealand. So that's where we sort of started at, and we're now about 20 years old. So relatively new or young for a bank. Our competitors who are all foreign owned, some of them have been around for 150, 180 years, right? So they're big institutions with lots of people working in them. But Kiwibank now is sort of the 5th largest bank in New Zealand. So we have about 11% of the market, depending on whether you're looking at sort of individual customers or business customers, but it's around about 11%. And we offer personal banking services and business banking services, but largely focused really on people. So we don't do a lot of like large corporate and institutional banking like some of the other banks do. So one of the terms used in banking is sort of this idea of focusing on the real economy. And that's something actually sort of bit of a segue into B Corp. It's one of the areas that as a bank, B Corp was quite interested in actually understanding, well, what is our contribution to the real economy? And that means that as a bank, essentially the product that we sell is money, or the transactions behind money. So either people are putting their money with us and we are, looking after it and helping it to grow, or they require additional money for things like purchasing a house or purchasing, a big asset or funding their business to grow more. And so then we lend that money out to them.
So it's really, you see that you have already a linkages from your history that is linked with the social roots and especially the development, the holistic development also of the economy. And then I've seen that you have grown in just, 11% in just in a decade or so. It's really interesting. And as well, the brand recognition is quite high in New Zealand. So you're one of the most trusted brand. And now you have gone a step further. So let me ask you, why the certification? Why a bank should be a B Corp?
Great question. And there's probably 2 parts to that, right? So one, why was it something that Kiwibank as an organization wanted to go down the path of certification? And then, as you say, sort of generally as a bank, why would we look for a certification like this when people tend to think that sustainability is more in terms of environmental impacts, and we don't, have any, we don't manufacture any products in that sense. So if I start with sort of why it was important to Kiwibank, and I think, sort of already touched on it in terms of our roots and our commitment to purpose really is probably what it comes down to. So as an organization, we have always had this very strong purpose, and our purpose statement, so the 5 words that encapsulates it is Kiwi making Kiwi better off. So the idea behind that is, we as Kiwibank are the organization that work to try and make the people around us, other Kiwi, better off in the long term. And so we've had this, we've had that purpose for a long time. It's something that, almost everyone who works for Kiwibank knows about, and it's the reason why they turn up to work in the morning. It's something we talk about externally. It has guided our decisions, but we never really had that way of going, of actually understanding how well we were performing. And so we conducted a piece of work last year where we were starting to actually dig under the hood of, okay, well, if we wanted to be able to sort of measure and benchmark how well we are delivering on our purpose, are we actually living up to this? Are we actually delivering for Kiwi? And that was really a really interesting process where we basically sort of focused on two key elements, so of being a purpose-led organisation. And so for us, what we determined was to be a purpose-led organisation, first of all, we have to have some really big external goals around what making Kiwi better off actually means for us and how we're going to measure that. So we developed those big external goals, and we've been working through at the moment, exactly what that means and how we're going to measure them and all of that sort of stuff. And then the other part was also ensuring that as a business, we had a holistic approach that incorporated purpose into everything we do. And so when we were thinking about that part, okay, well, we think we do quite a good job, but it's not enough really to trust ourselves. Let's look for an independent certification who can actually provide us that. And so we started looking around, and I'd actually, been involved in the B Corp movement a while back when they first came into New Zealand. So I already sort of knew a little bit about B Corp, but I'd never quite thought about it in the banking context. And so that's when we started and looked at, well, is this the right certification for us? And that's, I think one of the big things that we really liked about B Corp, and that stood out far above and beyond anything else that was out there, is that because the way in which B Corp tailors, the requirements or the standards that they're assessing you against to the industry that you're in, to the size of your company and where you're based, we were really able to get some quite specific questions from B Corp around what not just good looks like for us, but what best practice looks like for us in terms of being a sustainable organisation and also being a sort of a purpose-led organisation. When we, delved into those questions, that we went, actually, these questions are really good and do test us in terms of, best practice from a banking perspective and understanding our context. And I think, when you think about that and do a sort of question around why a bank and why would a bank become a B Corp, it really is that the questions that they've got are highly specific and really relevant to the industry that we're operating in. And what they're looking to find for a bank particularly is the way we are delivering finance going to deliver better outcomes for people in need, for the social challenges that we've got, and for the environmental challenges that we've got, the world is facing at the moment. So that becomes a really compelling proposition to actually go, well, we should be looking at that standard and seeing how we can work towards that. So that's why we ended up deciding to go down the B Corp route.
Thank you, Julia. I mean, it's really interesting to see which were also the motivation, and also, of course, the path. You have hinted, a bit of this tool, the assessment. This is something like this boulder that sometimes scares people. Can you cast some insights? How is it? Because discussing with people and then B Corp say, oh, wow, it's very difficult, a lot of questions. Is it something worth it? Can you give us from the inside, how is the process?
I would say that it's really useful. And what it's even useful to do. So what we're talking about is the B impact assessment. So and this is basically a free tool actually that anyone can choose to do. So any business, even if you decide in the end that B Corp, the actual certification isn't right for you, any business could actually just create an account within the B Lab or the B Corp website and do this B impact assessment. The important parts about it, I think, and one of the key things where people can get a little bit stuck is choosing the right, they call it the right track, but we'll essentially call it sort of the right pathway for you. So before I talked about these sort of the three key components being the sector that you operate in, how large you are, and where you're based. So depending on sort of what you put into the B impact assessment for those three questions, you'll get very different assessment questions when you're going through the B impact assessment. So we actually, before we started completing the questionnaire, we actually went to B Corp and said, this is the track or the pathway that we've put ourselves in. Is this right for us? and they were able to do an independent review of our business and our size and all that sort of stuff. And they actually changed the track that we were in. And I think that was really important because we sort of looked at it later on and we went, yeah, if we'd stayed on that same track, we would have had a lot of questions that just didn't really make sense for us or were very hard for us to answer. But because we sort of were on the right track from the get-go, it was still not easy. It's still a lot of work and there are a lot of questions, but it meant that we were focused on the right things and at least putting effort into things that are going to, actually contribute to our score. So one of the things that we did that was really important, I think, is it's probably two parts I think that are important. One is that we didn't try and be 100% perfect with our first go. So what we tried to do was get as many of the answers as we could in there and just flag the ones that we weren't quite sure about. So there might have been a few things where we thought, I think we've got a policy on this, or I think we do this, but I can't quite think who to talk to in the organisation who could actually confirm that for me, or I'm not, that person's on holiday at the moment, or they're on leave, or whatever it was. And so what we did instead of that is just in the B Corp assessment, you can actually sort of bookmark things. And so we bookmarked a few of the questions and said we'll follow up later. And that enabled us to complete about 80% of the B impact assessment sort of in that first go. So then you've sort of, I guess, as a, just from your own energy levels going through it, you get a bit of momentum and you start to get a sense of where you're at without sort of just feeling like it's so overwhelming that you sort of get disillusioned and stop. So I think that was really important for us, and putting a set time limit on it as well, I think, was the other thing that really helped just that first initial hurdle. So we basically said that we wanted to submit our B impact assessment by the end of December. We started in November, and so we had quite a specific deadline. And in New Zealand, the Christmas period is a big shutdown period. Most businesses close for at least 2 or 3 weeks. So it was also nice to sort of know that you'd then end the year with a big piece of work completed. The other thing we did that sort of within the actual B impact assessment itself is you can download all of the questions into an Excel. So depending on your working style, again, for some people, they find the online questions can be quite overwhelming. But what we were able to do by downloading it is we just went through very quickly at the start and went, okay, these are all questions that should be answered by, again, we're a large organisation, so we've got lots of specialists within the organisation, right? So we went, okay, that's our diversity and inclusion specialist. That's our, customer experience or customer feedback specialist. That question needs to be answered by procurement. And so we just quite quickly segmented out the questions of who needed to answer what, because unless you're sort of an owner operator working in a very small business and you have access to all of the systems and all of the information, I'd say most businesses are going to need a couple of people across the organisation to be providing input into it. So whether that's, data around your employees, because there's a lot of questions around employees, or data around your suppliers, data around your customers. Those tend to be different people in the organisation who provide that sort of information. So for us, having that view very much at the beginning of things did make it just that little bit easier for us to get through.
You have given us very key insights on the process. And I really like the segmenting, the work, and it's something that you said is doable. And it's really helped you, also. And I like also the pragmatic approach that you have taken, which is also a message to the audience. Everybody can download it, can see if it's applicable to your business, but it's something that is really helping you think. We can summarize it. Let me ask you, okay, you have done this exercise, and we have seen that you have gone through, and then you've got this pragmatic approach. So now that you got the certification, Julia, which are the changes? What have you noticed? Which are the benefits? So, I'm a small business. I want to go through here, but I want to understand more.
So there's probably two ways of looking at it, right? So there's benefits internally. And so the benefits that we've had as an organisation for ourselves, having what I think it gave us was a really clear view on where we're at today. So a really honest assessment of where you're at, because it's very easy to, we all love the companies that we work in and we think we're doing great work, and often we are doing really great work, right? But what B Corp gives you is across all aspects of your business, because there's not really many aspects of the business that aren't touched in some way by the assessment, really where you're sitting and what are some opportunities for improvement. So that's been really helpful for us to go, actually, we do probably better than we thought in this area, but maybe we can focus a little bit more on that area. So it's actually provided us with that honest view of where we're at and sort of, again, so where we can focus on improving things. Then the other sort of, I guess, key benefit that we've had, and just on that point, I guess what I'll say is what we are now doing is actually using the B Corp assessment when we're looking at setting annual plans and stuff. So when we're looking at what our key initiatives going to be, what are our big programs of work, either from an operational perspective or even looking at some of the customer initiatives that we run, what are the areas where we know from the B Corp assessment that we maybe needed to improve? And so we're actually using that to sort of input into that planning process, so that I guess we're deliberately at the front sort of helping to improve our score for future certification rounds, because that's one of the key parts of B Corp is that you have to, every 3 years when you go for recertification, you have to demonstrate that you've improved based on your previous score. The other benefit that we've really seen that we, I guess, had probably hoped for but hadn't necessarily expected is the positive reception from our customers, community, stakeholders, interested parties, around the fact that we have now have this independent assessment, independent assurance of how we're performing as a purpose-led organisation. So we've had quite a few, particularly from our business customers, quite a few customers contacting us and just saying, hey, this is fantastic. I'm also on the B Corp journey. Maybe they're not quite certified yet, but they might be, going through the assessment or considering it. The fact that, my bank is now a certified B Corp has really, given me a lot of hope, and also made me sort of want to continue down this journey and really sort of want to work with you on that. So we've had a lot of that positive reception from our business customers, and then from personal customers, I think, as well. We've had a lot of people just saying, this is one of the reasons why I chose Kiwibank, because I knew that you were going to do banking differently, and this is just another reason that supports the choice that I've made. So it's helped them sort of feel that loyalty and commitment to Kiwibank and validated their choices. And then really interestingly, even some of our government stakeholders are really interested in what we're doing, and our investors, as a way to be able to benchmark our progress against other companies that they might be looking at. So they've really enjoyed it from that perspective of going, well, this is a great standard that we can actually now start to incorporate when we're doing assessments of companies, including Kiwibank. So it has been a really positive reception from all of our stakeholder different camps that we have, I guess.
Really interesting. I really like the fact that the assessment has become a kind of strategic tool for formulation of policies that you are doing. And then as well, that's really interesting reception about customers and others, which is also much the literature, and the review that the customer perception and loyalty. Let me ask, can you share an example on how you have reshaped some of your business practices out of the certification?
I would say that, we're relatively new as a B Corp, so we are still sort of working through some of that stuff, but a couple of things that we have done. So one is the governance section of B Corp. So as a sort of a certified B Corp, you have to be considering, the broader stakeholders in the decisions that you make. So at the moment, we're going through a process of changing all of our, the templates, the decision-making templates that go to our board and our executive, to actually specifically incorporate that consideration into the papers, so that people are actually, so that, when decisions are being made, that conversation is going to be had around what impact does this actually have on your stakeholders. So, and that sounds like a subtle change, and you could look at it and go, okay, we possibly should be doing that anyway, and that's just good business practice. But I think that's one of the good things about B Corp, is that it forces you to actually formalize some of these things that maybe you've always thought about doing, but actually never quite put into that really structured and deliberate way and accountable way, right? So, as a B Corp, we are now accountable to ensure that we are, having that consideration and, ensuring that we can actually explain why we've made the decisions that we make. So that's, I think, been a really positive change, and that will be something that, then flows through to every decision that is made in the organization. So quite a profound impact. And then the other area, I think what we've been doing a lot of thinking about is some of the areas around the customer impact space. So, looking at sort of as a bank, the questions that we got in sort of customer impact were sort of around how do you ensure that the products that you design are, having long-term positive benefit for your customers and, reaching sort of communities that might not otherwise get access to financial products. And so we had quite an interesting experience with B Corp, which most certified B Corps will probably be familiar with, where you think you're doing something really great. And so we put it through it as part of our assessment that, we've got this, we've got a couple of products that we think we're really supporting, the improvement of financial inclusion and ensuring that people can access sort of safe, fair and affordable credit. And then B Corp looked at it. So one of the ones was that we've got a partnership with an organisation called Ngā Tangata who do microfinance products. So small, no fee, no interest loans. Really amazing positive social impact, something that we've been involved in for about 7 or 8 years now. I'm really proud of the partnership. When B Corp looked at it, they went, that's great, love what you're doing, but it's not a significant part of your business. It doesn't actually represent enough of your total revenue to be something that we could actually count for your score. So that's an interesting conversation, right? Because you actually get 0 points for that partnership in and of itself. So at the moment, we have been having conversations around, what's the future of that partnership and how can we actually support and enable that work more. So I think that's quite an interesting area, and again, one that speaks to sort of how B Corp goes probably beyond what some other certifications might, or I guess if you're trying to be cynical about something like B Corp and going, oh well, is it just a tick box exercise where you can, where you're just trying to get as many points as you want. The actual certification process in and of itself is really robust, and it really questions things and asks for evidence in a way, there's no way that you can sort of fake the truth of how you're operating. And so I think, again, how they wanted to see, yes, that we've got that partnership and that we offer those products and people can access them, but also how much does that represent as a total, sort of percentage of revenue as an organization. It's giving, they're really seeking to see a full picture of everything that we're doing.
That is very interesting. You're giving a really good insight on how the process and also the robustness, as you say, of the assessment. That is really holistic, a way also to reshape the way you do business. It's not just as a ticking box or just a certificate, but it's really a transformational journey. Now, Giulia, opinion, is it for everyone? There is a lot of debate about B Corp. So what do you think about the B Corp movement? Is it for everybody? Is it something that could be really a movement, since you are inside and you're choosing it, that can reshape capitalism and finally give us solution, to how to solve this very wicked problem of sustainability, purpose and profit,
Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, my strong opinion is that I feel like every business would benefit from going through the assessment, and no matter what you're seeking to understand from it, you will inevitably learn something and make your business better. I think it does have quite it does force you as a business to ask some tricky questions and have some tricky conversations around what you really stand for, and are you prepared to sort of change the way you do business and take a stand for, as you said at the beginning, sort of purpose and profit operating together. So I think, again, that is a really powerful part of the B Corp certification process. Where I think there may be some slight difference is whether or not every single business needs to go through the actual certification. So the full assurance process, and becoming a certified B Corp. I think for some businesses that might be a step too far at the moment. It might be something that is just a bit overwhelming for them, and it might distract from making some of the small changes that they could be making from the insights that they get just from doing that sort of upfront B impact assessment. Not to say that in sort of 5 or 10 years, I don't think all businesses should be getting there or could be getting there. But I'm not sure the reality of, some of our smaller business customers who are, really, really busy and operating. We have an expression in New Zealand, on the smell of an oily rag, which sort of means that, you don't have many sort of spare people or spare hours in the day. I think for them, the effort is probably best placed up front in that B impact assessment, and then putting some change in place that is going to help that business be better, think differently about who they're serving and how they're serving customers, and what problem do they actually exist to solve. Because until you've really answered that for yourself, I don't know if you can even go down the certification path. But I think that is one of the real benefits that free impact assessment gives you, is the ability to rethink the way, ask those tough questions of why you exist.
Very interesting. Thank you, Julie. I think we can look at it as a process. You can start from the assessment, and then from there you can see your journey towards the certification. We are approaching the end. I mean, it has been a very insightful episode. So I want to ask you, what is your message as a sustainability leader that you want to give to the audience?
Yeah, great. I mean, I would say don't be afraid to just give it a go and start. If you're working in an organization and you're not sure if the organization is up for it, start the conversation. I think being proactive about understanding the role that your business is playing in society is fundamental to all businesses today, and that you should be asking those questions. And even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable, as you were saying, I guess, because this is a journey, even if you're at the very start, the important thing is to just be on that journey and give it a go. And as I said, you will learn something no matter where you're at in your journey, and no matter sort of how far you go into the full certification process. I think you will always learn something that will make your business better, make you more resilient, make you more aware of what is coming. So just give it a go.
Thank you so much. I think it's really a very powerful message, Julia. Give it a go, try. And then, when you try, I think results will come. And then I can see already from your experience, you have already done some incredible transformation. I want to thank you so much, Julia, for your time and for very insightful episode, because you have really went deep in also the way and the journey, to get what is now called a real badge of honor. Some papers, they are calling, the B Corp certification, because it's really an hard and difficult path, but it's really, we can say, rewarding. Thank you so much, but I'm sure we will see, as we always say, we will have a follow-up, and we will try to see another where, you are taking Kiwibank, and maybe you can become also, as you said, you are even being an example for other businesses to go to the same path. So thank you so much, Julia, and I'm really grateful.
No, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me all the way from little old New Zealand.
Are you satisfied after this wonderful episode? Let's continue together our sustainability journey.